We all live in this chaotic and hectic world, yet all of us are called to embody the example of the Good Samaritan. Hi, my name is Tom, and this is Et Amor Evangeli, Love in the Gospel. Let's face it, we live in a chaotic world. We live in a country tainted by the politics of immorality and injustice. That immorality is seen all through society, from murder, xenophobia, stealing, sexism, racism, homophobia. The list goes on and on. We live in the world hurting from the effects of climate change, a world where the poor are still marginalized, and one affected by the devastations of a global pandemic. And of course, we live in a world captivated by the mobile phone, a place where we can share our lives with others and text people and call people, yet can fall into the traps of addiction and hatred. It may often seem like we can get lost in this hectic world. Yet, the state of our world can make us feel so overwhelmed that we just feel like there's no hope for the future. And oftentimes, this is where I find myself too. Again, I'm not sure if you have felt this way, but I most certainly have. And the Catholic Church has taken notice, in particular Pope Francis. In October of 2020, Pope Francis released a new encyclical document entitled Fratelli Tutti, Brothers and Sisters All. An encyclical document is official church teaching that comes directly from the Pope, of course. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in this video, of course, and of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to hit up the comments section down below, and I will try to answer any of the comments to the best of my ability. So in chapter 1, Pope Francis talks about the idea of dark clouds over a closed world, almost like a hurricane to some degree. In this chapter, he talks a lot about what we see in our society. The shattered dreams of reconciliation between nations, ignorance about historical consciousness, the ridicule associated with denying others of different opinions, the lack of respect for all human life, the inequality found in human rights, war, terrorist attacks, religious persecutions, the moral deterioration of politics and society, the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, the absence of human dignity associated with migrants and immigrants, concerns of expanding technology, the false wisdom associated with sharing views with only certain groups of people, and of course the destruction of others' self-esteem. Wow, that's a lot. However, Pope Francis, even after stating all of this, talks a lot about the fact that there should be a plan for hope in our society, that hope can still be found in the midst of all that we see in our world as chaos and ruin. He states that, quote, "Despite these dark clouds, which may not be ignored, God continues to sow abundant seeds of goodness in our human family." As he closes out his first chapter, Pope Francis makes note that he wants to, quote, "invite everyone to renewed hope, for hope speaks to us of something deeply rooted in every human heart, independently of our circumstances and historical conditioning." In chapter 2, Pope Francis begins to introduce the hope that he wants all of us to participate in by first relaying the story of the Good Samaritan. He states that the significance of this parable teaches us that love does not discriminate, that, quote, "love does not care if a brother or sister in need comes from one place or another. For love shatters the chains that keep us isolated and separate. In their place, it builds up bridges. Love enables all of us to create one great family where all of us can feel at home." Pope Francis wants to make abundantly clear that all of us have a duty to act as the Good Samaritan did, to help those who are suffering and to bring up the downtrodden. We have a call to live as a society that includes those who suffer, and we cannot hide in isolation from the world, for we're called to make it better, not separate ourselves from it. That is where our love can fully be expressed. Pope Francis also makes clear that just because one can believe and worship in God, like the priest and the Levite in the story of the Good Samaritan, does not mean that we are living in a way pleasing to God. In that same way, the Pope reminds us that we have a duty to be a neighbor to others and to love in a way that, quote, transcends all prejudices, all historical and cultural barriers, all petty interests. In chapter 3, Pope Francis focuses on how we can take that love that the Good Samaritan did and work towards an open world. Moving beyond the closed world and the storm he described in chapter 1, Pope Francis reminds all of us that we need to try to understand that love takes precedence over all things. He warns all people that, quote, all of us as believers need to recognize that love takes first place. Love must never be put at risk, and the greatest danger lies in failing to love. Pope Francis, of course, also takes aim at the lack of dignity shown in human rights issues all around the world. He talks about fraternity and how we need to find a way to respect our neighbors rather than bring them down. For all of us, love and fraternity should transcend ourselves and help us to encounter others in a way so as to provide them with a true and authentic care and worth. Additionally, solidarity is something that helps us sympathize with our brothers and sisters who struggle and helps us to learn to care for them. It shouldn't matter the color of your skin, your religion, your background, your talents, and even your ethnicity. The greatest call for all of us is to love one another. Peace can only be found through this solidarity and genuine care for those who are less fortunate than ourselves. In chapter 4, Pope Francis addresses the issues associated with immigration and nationalism. In particular, he talks about how we have a job to respond to immigration by welcoming, protecting, promoting, and immigrating those who immigrate from other countries. For the immigrants, quote, bring an opportunity for enrichment and the integral human development of all. By opening our hearts and minds towards immigrants and different vulnerable populations, we can develop more as a world and begin to understand more of the world around us. We cannot and should not hold prejudices against immigrants, for when we begin to see the world from their perspective, they still have something to offer, and they are a child of God. But in chapter 5, Pope Francis talks about how our politics should be used in a way so as to help these vulnerable populations. By giving less concern for vulnerable populations in countries around the world, we exploit them and create a kind of liberalism that can only care about the rich, powerful, and wealthy. When we talk about the people of a country, we cannot just look at the rich and powerful. In that way, we need to serve the interests of the poor and marginalized, who are often seen as people of no interest or as populists dismissed on abstract concepts that don't represent who they are. Therefore, Pope Francis states that our entire political atmosphere is dependent on our ability to see a change of heart, attitudes, and lifestyles. Pope Francis also addresses the idea of constituents, or the inclination for all of us to have a share in selfish and petty interests. He even points out the need for reform in the United Nations as they continue to drift away from defending the common good of all of those who need help. He tells us that although our politics are tainted by corruption and a lack of empathy, the marginalized still need our help. In fact, politics is what keeps society going, but our politics must go a radical change of mindset by embracing political charity and seeking the good of every person. It also must embrace an openness to agreement and concern for the common good. There is something noble in politics that needs to be said, but we must open our hearts to helping others through those politics. In the final few chapters of the encyclical, Pope Francis focuses on the idea, of course, of social dialogue. He makes clear that dialogue needed for our society and world is not one resulting from the exchanging of opinions on social media, but one that embodies a respect for different points of view to understand different concerns and valid ideas. I don't know about you, but I see this a lot on social media. The Pope has recognized that social media is both a place where we can learn about others, but also holds grave dangers when we only surround ourselves with people who think like ourselves. When this happens, it can be difficult to hold up a mindset of holding up human dignity as the premise for all dialogue, especially with those we don't agree with. Along with this mindset comes with a transformation of our world into a culture of encounter. He states that this culture, quote, means that we as a people should be passionate about meeting others, seeking points of contact, building bridges, planning a project that includes everyone. This culture of encounter must include a path to peace for all people and all nations. In calling for unity and peace, it should not be a uniform unity where everyone thinks the same. Rather, Pope Francis calls for a unity of diversity, where diversity is embraced and all people are respected for different opinions and points of view. In addition, Pope Francis also points out the violence in response to diversity that should never be an option. For, quote, Jesus never promoted violence or intolerance. He openly condemned the use of force to gain power over others. However, this does not mean that the Pope is arguing for no defense of human dignity. Rather, by embracing a path of nonviolence, the same path of nonviolence shown by the example of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, the call for peace should be an exact cause for the strenuous working towards a preservation of human dignity in any stage. In addition to this, we cannot erase the horrific memories from our past, though. In particular, we should learn from our past and continue to pass along the stories of survivors of events where human dignity was violated, especially in the case of war, Holocaust, or other tragic events. By remembering the mistakes of our past, we can work towards a bigger and brighter future. He reminds us that all of us must never just forgive and forget, but to forgive and remember. In this light, we must remember that revenge never solves anything, and along with it, war. War, as the Pope argues, is a great harm to society, one that harms both the intrinsic dignity of human beings and our environment. Although the Church has a position that self-defense in the case of war is moral, check the catechism for that one, it is something that it should not be, rather, misconstrued to start a war. He states that, quote, every war leaves our world worse than before. War is a failure of politics and humanity. Along with war, Pope Francis addresses the issues associated with the death penalty and how the Catholic Church has stated from the beginning how immoral it is. Even Jesus showed its immorality when he was being arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he said, quote, put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will die by the sword. Finally, Pope Francis sends a plea for all people of all religions to respect life and to avoid pushing hatred or violence because of different religious beliefs. He believes that peace is possible between religions and that we must be open to active dialogue among those with different beliefs from ours. In this final plea, he calls on all people, quote, in the name of God, innocent human life, the poor, the destitute, the marginalized, orphans, refugees, and those exiled from their homes, peoples who have lost their security, peace, and the possibility of living together, for human fraternity, freedom, justice, and mercy in all persons of goodwill, to adopt a culture of dialogue as the better path to a better future. All of us, no matter what religion, race, background, or experience, are called to this culture of dialogue. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us in a position to advocate for open dialogue and to embrace the call to love and social friendship. By working together, dialogue and love, we can create a better world and one that will have a bright future ahead. So as you finish watching this video, I encourage all of you to embrace the call to love by Pope Francis and to be open to dialogue among people who think differently than you. By doing this, we can create a better society and a better world. Thanks for watching, and I'd like you, once again, to encourage you, of course, to hit the red subscribe button at the bottom of this video. If you want to see my introduction video, this will also be linked into this video, so please feel free to take a look at that. And feel free also to hit that notification button, the little bell below for different updates from this page. Hopefully, new video in a couple weeks. I will be excited. Alright, again, thank you for watching. God bless all of you, and take care, brothers and sisters.